They want that steady paycheck. And there's a rich person, and they're all inside of us except that. It's not taught. You're taught to go to school, get a job, and get a paycheck. Not taught how to get rich. If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my rich dad refused to pay me. He said the paycheck was one of the most damaging things you can take in your life. He says the moment you take a paycheck, you're an employee, and that's the mindset. So my rich dad never paid me. It drove my poor dad, a government employee, nuts. You got to pay people. You gotta pay people, and Rich Dad was not saying that the paycheck was bad. He says he didn't want to be a slave to money. So as an entrepreneur, if Rich Dad folded, I'd just try another company. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need anybody to take care of me. If my government doesn't like me, I move to another country because they need entrepreneurs there. So the entrepreneur is not so much the business. The entrepreneur is really the mindset and the skill sets and the different set of rules. You see, I don't operate small business does not operate in the same rules as big business. Entrepreneur is a mindset first, a skill set and rules. And depending upon whether you're an employee or small business, the rules are different. The mindsets are different. The skill sets are different. If you could say one thing to somebody who's never been an entrepreneur and they're thinking about making the leap of faith into becoming an entrepreneur, what could you tell them? I'll just tell them the same thing that happened to me. My last paycheck. I still remember it clearly. It was one of the worst and the best days of my life, and I was in Puerto Rico. I was working for Xerox, and my boss gave me my last. It wasn't a paycheck, it was a bonus check. I think it was about $30,000 taxable. That's the only problem with that. So I get this check and I went, holy mackerel. So I was excited, but I was also disturbed. And so this other guy comes up to me. His name was John, and John says to me this, "You're going to be back?" I said, "Why?" He says, "Because you're going to fail." I looked at him and I said, "Look," few expletive words because that's what he did. He left Xerox, failed, and he came back. I said, "Look, you fail and you came back, but I'm gonna fail and I'm never coming back." And that's the attitude. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, if you say, "Well, if I fail, I'll go back to mommy and daddy," then that's what you'll do. So if you fail, that's when I became an entrepreneur, because I had no money. I had no money for years. Yeah, I didn't have a paycheck, but that's what my rich dad encouraged me to do. He says when you don't have this paycheck, you get hungrier, smarter, and it's a test of your character. Will you become a crook? Will you become dishonest? Will you cheat and steal? Or will you become a better human being? So really, that's the benefit of becoming an entrepreneur. You really find out who you are when you don't have anything. So you always have to look at the big picture. Too many people look at, well, what's going to happen to me? When you look at the big picture, you're also going to know that when something bad happens, something good is going to happen. But you got to prepare for whatever is coming. If you think the next 20 years will be like the last 20 years, you're going to get creamed. When you and I go to the supermarket and we buy a carton of milk, we always check for the expiration date. But most people do not check for the expiration date on their brains. Instead of getting out of debt, I get into debt. I just refinanced $300 million in debt. I went from 5% to 2.5% interest. I made a fortune. Every month, more money comes in because my cost of money has gone down. So while some financial experts are saying, get out of debt, I'm saying, learn how to use debt.